Good afternoon, Warrior Nation. As promised, I'm here today to try to explain to you all of the details, and it's quite a bit of information. So go grab you a Diet Coke or a coffee and sit down and just sit back and take it all in. And then I'll send you the slide deck at the end of this presentation as well, so that you can go in and review it all on your own at the end. Okay, I've asked Jennifer Newton to join us and help with that. Jennifer's leading our COVID task force. She's our COVID coordinator and the executive assistant to the administrator now. And so she has all the answers and has done lots and lots of research for us. And then as well, our favorite, Mrs. Julie Zintel, and she's going to be here to help us to understand how remote learning is going to amplify, how it's going to be bigger and better than it was even in the springtime. And so they're here to help me to answer any questions that you might come up with afterwards. And so we're going to share our screen here and get started. Thank you for your patience as we get over here to the presentation. So our main goal in all of this was providing the best education in the best environment in the midst of a global pandemic. And please know that that is our number one objective in all of this, is to continue to educate safely, to balance out the health and safety of our faculty and our students with the best practices in education. And so, our vision at Holy Cross is the best education in the best environment. And I'm going to try to explain to you exactly how we came to the decisions that we feel support that. First, I want to introduce you to our task force, the group of ladies who have basically given up their whole summer to cut through the noise of social media and the news media and all of the biases that are out there regarding this, and get down to the true facts, and then try to build a plan, an operational plan for our school through that. And so you'll see them all here. Jennifer and Julie, I've already introduced you to. Of course, Cheryl Martin is our technology guru. Tiffany Conrad just naturally falls into the communication category. And Gisela Tucker has taken on the part of what curriculum and instruction needs to look like, specifically regarding keeping our environment healthy. How do we communicate those best practices of hygiene and health to our students without them being scared, without creating a sense of fear? And so she's done a great job with that. And then Bethany Smith, who is responsible for all of the cleaning on our campus, has taken on the role of the sanitation specialist in our group. I wanted to also let you know that, like I said before, we tried to cut through all the noise and get down to the facts and the data that truly would point us in the direction that we needed to go. And so these are the organizations that we leaned heavily upon. Gisela Tucker and Jennifer Newton and I all took a course from Johns Hopkins this summer in contact tracing, so that we could understand how the virus, and any germs for that matter, transmit from people group to people group, and how we can then mitigate that. And so we're certified as contact tracers now, and so that helps us to make those decisions on how do we keep our environment as germ-free as possible at Holy Cross. But most of all, beyond all of those authorities that I've just shared with you, we're leaning heaviest on God's word and his scripture. And everything we've decided, everything we've done has been bathed in prayer, both before we during and after we made the decision, because we wanted everything that we decided to not have any personal agenda in it, not be because of our own feelings or maybe inhibitions about the virus, but that we were being led by God. And so we've prayed and prayed for discernment. We've prayed for wisdom in making the choices that we feel help us to do what God's commanded us to do at 1233 Tarver Road. And so the theme verse for this year is 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. And Paul is writing this to his beloved people in Corinth. And he speaks to them just the way we feel about our beloved at Holy Cross. We love our school family more than anything. That's one of the distinctives of Holy Cross, is that we are like a family. That's how Paul felt about the Corinthians. And so he speaks to them that way as he says, finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice. Rejoice. Even in the midst of all that was going on in Corinth, he's telling them, because of Christ, your lives are worth celebrating. And I'm going to tell you, I haven't felt like that while I was in quarantine. I was kind of having a pity party because I had lots of school stuff I needed to do, yet I was just sitting right here and couldn't go anywhere. And so this verse really stepped on my toes, because I realized that in Christ, my life is worth celebrating. And yours is too. No matter the circumstances, even in the midst of a pandemic, we as Christians should be celebrating. And then he charges us with this challenge by saying, strive for full restoration. Now, what he's talking about is full restoration with Christ, to be completely in one with Jesus. And we can't do that when there's strife or conflict between us. We can't do that if there's sin in our lives, because sin drives us away from Jesus. But what he's talking about is just coming together fully. And that's exactly what we want. That is our heart's desire at Holy Cross, is that we would be restored all back together as that warrior family that we love being. And then he goes on to say, encourage one another, be of one mind, and live in peace. Basically, Paul's telling us that we are responsible for building each other up. It's our job to make sure that others around us are being built up, and that we're not in conflict with one another. But though we may have different ideas or different opinions, we can be of one mind and live in peace and encourage each other. Colossians 3:13 says, bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. He's asking us to use a godly form of tolerance, keeping those things moving forward so that we can keep being united in Christ, that we would not let anything, even a global pandemic or a coronavirus, divide us. And then he ends like this, and the God of love and peace will be with you. And we read over that like it's just a benediction, and it's just something we take for granted. But warriors, I'm asking you not to do that today. I'm asking you to see those words for what the power that is behind them. Paul is saying, no matter the circumstance, no matter what happens, we don't know what all was going on when he wrote this letter to the people in Corinth. But as it speaks to us today, no matter the situation or the circumstance that we're in now, we are never, ever alone. God is there with us. And that, my friends, is the main thing. That is so very important to us moving through this school year and returning to that full restoration that we're all hoping for. And so we've used that as we've worked through all of this. And I will tell you that we didn't always agree on the best details in each way, but we kept working through them and praying over them until we got to what we felt like was what God wanted for Holy Cross. I wanted to speak to you a moment about the standard of care principle. It's a legal principle. Basically, it could be boiled down to this quote from Jurassic Park, if you've ever watched that movie: just because you can doesn't mean you should. And we've been in legal counsel. We've read all of the legal documents that have come out. And so for those of you that are questioning, well, why do you have to do it? Why are you doing this just because BISD is doing this, or just because Fort Worth ISD is doing this? And that's not why we've made these decisions. I'm assuring you that we've made these decisions for Holy Cross because we feel like it is the best choice for Holy Cross. And the Texas Attorney General has stated that because of the First Amendment, we do, as a private school, as a Christian school, have the right to make our own decisions. And I've told you guys that in the past. We are not bound by what TEA says. However, in that same document, he urges Christian schools to utilize all of the prior guidance on mitigation strategies and to strongly encourages us to require masks. Now, that long document boils down to, as a Christian school, we don't have to do what TEA puts out. We don't have to even do what the local government mandates. However, we are still held to a standard of care. So if we say we're going to open our campus, even though no other school is, and then a whole bunch of kids get sick, we will be held responsible for that. And even if it wasn't a liability issue, it would be a heart issue for us. We feel a strong responsibility. We love your kids like they're our own. And so we feel a strong responsibility to making sure that the decisions, the actions that we take care of those that we love and respect. And you guys, we love and respect. So there are three major principles that help us to navigate a pandemic. And those three things that we want to strive to be excellent at are batching, monitoring, and reducing time and exposure. Now, I'm going to take a 2-week course and I'm going to condense it down into about 40 seconds for you. But batching basically means reducing the number of people that have contact with each other and then moving them around in a pack as much as humanly possible to try to avoid cross-contamination. Monitoring is watching out for what's going on around us and trying to keep that whole environment, our whole school campus, as healthy as possible by reducing the number of COVID viruses that are even introduced into that environment. And then reducing time and exposure is exactly that. It's the things we can do that would reduce the amount of exposure or the time that we're exposed to the virus. We can't create a COVID-free environment. And if any school out there promises you that, beware, because that's an impossibility. We can't even see where the virus is. We have to make our best guess at that and make assumptions upon symptoms and signs. But we want to do our very, very best to create a safe, healthy environment where we can come together and we can learn, and that we could get to the end of this school year having accomplished all of the objectives that you expect and that we as educators are demanding of our students. And so these are the three things that we used, along with that principle of the standard of care, as we set out our plan. And so that is why we came to the conclusion. I'm going to explain all the details, or Julie and Jennifer are actually going to explain most of the details of our plan. But I wanted to be the one to tell you that that is what drove the decision to start remotely on August 25th. It was not a mandate from Tarrant County or from the state or even from the city of Burleson. We made this decision last week, and we wanted to give that decision to first the board of directors to make sure that we had their support, and then to give it to our teachers. We felt like they deserve that respect to know the information first, and then you are the next people that we wanted to make sure were aware of it. I do apologize for the time it took us to get to that. We've just been watching the situation and praying every single day that that trajectory would go down in cases. But so far, that hasn't been the case. We're still praying, and we ask you to join us in that. Just continue to be of one mind with us and pray and encourage one another as we wait for it to go back down. So we will begin remote learning on August. Well, let me back up just a little bit. We will, the first week of school, August 25th, we're going to invite individual families, similar to the way we did at the end of school, but you'll be able to come in the campus because we are not in shelter in place, so we can have you into the campus. We want to give you the warmest Holy Cross welcome we can. We want you to get to feel like you're back with your warrior family. And then we want to be able to orient you on the new school year with the new teacher. I want you to get to know her well, to have some personal one-on-one time with her, get all of the information that you need to be successful at home. All of the supplies and everything have already been purchased, and so those things will come back to your home in a bundle, in a package. And then as we go through each day, you'll be able to open those things up and do your remote learning at home. The individual families will come that whole week, and we're setting that week aside so that we can make sure we can take all of the time possible with you, so that you feel comfortable with what you're going to do, that you feel well equipped and ready to lock arms with us for this new school year. We will be doing remote learning from August 25th until September 18th. Okay, so that'll be 3 weeks of remote learning after our Howdy Week. In the meantime, the COVID task force will continue to, moment by moment, monitor the situation. We'll keep track of the cases. What we need to see is a 7-day at least trajectory of it going down in our local area and statewide, to make sure that we aren't magnifying the number of cases that are coming on campus, but rather reducing them. And we also want to make sure that we don't have any cases in our student body as we come onto campus. You'll get weekly updates, and a decision will be made 1 week out when we return to campus. But if I can repeat again, we don't have to return to campus when BISD has been mandated to wait. I think there's a September 28th because of the Attorney General's order. That is our decision to make, and we will make it based on, can our staff and our students function healthy? Can we be safe? And so we're looking at September 21st as the first available day to be back on campus. It could be September 28th, or it might be a later date, depending on the state of the area around us, okay? And so now I've asked Julie Zintel to join us and to explain what remote learning is going to be like. We've had such great feedback from all of our families about remote learning in the spring. But I'm going to tell you guys, we did that on one day's professional development. And I think our teachers knocked it out of the ballpark. They did a tremendous job, head and shoulders above what so many others received. But we know, you know, at Holy Cross, we always strive to excel still more. And so we're moving that up significantly for the fall. And Julie's going to tell you all about that. Thank you.
Y'all can't see me, but that picture that was just on makes me smile every single time. I just can't help but smile at this young man smiling at his teacher, and it just makes me happy. All right, so I'm here to talk to you about the remote learning standards for the new school year. And one of the things that guided this, and the main thing is that no matter where we are, our goal is always the same: the best education in the best environment. And that means that if the healthiest environment for a limited time is our home, how are we going to provide the best education there? We can always excel still more. And so we needed to take a look at the things that we did in the spring and how we could take the feedback we got and make decisions about what we could expect for the new school year, so that no matter what happens throughout the school year, when or if we have to go into remote learning, we know what that will look like. One of the things that we were looking at when we were thinking about where we were going to start school is starting remote learning off with a strong, solid foundation. We wouldn't want to create a situation where kids were back on campus for a couple of days and then a cohort or a group had to leave and be back later with us and go into remote learning while others were on campus. We want to have everybody have a strong, solid start, and a great start where they could figure out how remote learning would work. And this is how remote learning will work if we have to go into it at any time, not just here at the beginning of the school year. So this way we don't have any ping-ponging back and forth, but rather we have everybody starting off together and everybody starting off on a really strong foot. So as we look at the definitions, there are just a couple of things I want to be sure that everybody knows and understands in the same way, because you may have heard these terms batted around a whole lot, but I want to make sure we are all on the same page. Synchronous learning is any time you have real-time live instruction with teachers and students participating together. So they get to interact, they get to talk with one another, they get to hear from each other. So it is real-time live instruction. And going forward in remote learning, this will be a part of our daily instruction for all grade levels. All grade levels will expect synchronous learning so that we can continue to build and develop and strengthen our relationships with one another, our relationships between our students and our teachers. We want that bond to continue to grow. Synchronous learning could include things like read-alouds, where all the class is together and the teacher's getting to read a story to them. F&F small groups, just like we would meet in school, we can meet over Zoom and talk about our books and our visual tools. Direct instruction from the teacher, so that the teacher can give some instruction about a new concept or review a concept and hear back immediately in real time. How are the students understanding it? What are they struggling with? What can she help with? So we're going to have a direct instruction. Now that doesn't mean, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, doesn't mean it won't be supported with asynchronous learning, but it does mean that we want to have that direct instruction from the teacher be part of those live instruction times. It can also include community check-ins, things like show and tell, question of the week, anything where we're getting together as our classroom community and able to just socialize and talk with each other and learn more about one another. Asynchronous learning is an experience the students participate in on their own time. They're going to interact with the materials, whether it's a video or other types of materials provided. So the students can participate in those on their own time. These can be added to our daily instruction and are certainly an important support system for our daily instruction. Asynchronous learning can include things like interactive videos and content, things like EduPuzzle, where you're learning about something and then you answer questions as the video progresses, or quizzes, pre-recorded mini lessons that support direct instruction. So there might be times when we're learning a new concept, long division, and we talk about it in class, but then when we go to work on our actual math work, we need something more. And so the student would be able to go and watch their teacher again and see what they need, take it step by step, maybe pause it along the way. Anything that the class needs to repeat, like if they're practicing ABCs or days of the week, those are going to be fun videos that you want them to do more than just one day at one time. So asynchronous learning could include a variety of different things. The next thing that we're going to talk about is just the fact that we want to be sure that we are providing all of our families, whether we are on campus or at home, remotely learning, with the things that make Holy Cross special. And certainly our teachers are a very valuable resource in making Holy Cross distinct and unique. With that in mind, since our teachers are one of our most valuable resources, grade level and core teachers will meet with their classes daily for each day that they would meet in school. Since that is important, we want to continue that. We want to have them interact and see each other every class day. That also means that educational links, YouTube videos, Khan Academy lessons, anything like that can certainly supplement our learning, but they are not a replacement for our teachers. So they certainly could help us in times when we're learning a different technique or a different way of doing something, but they won't replace those same lessons taught by our teachers. Not only are our teachers important, certainly the other half of that equation and the student-teacher relationship are the students. And our students are our greatest achievements. We are very, very proud of each and every warrior. And that means that in order to have class, we need you there. We need our kids there. So attendance in remote learning is mandatory because we just need you to be there with us. If there are any technical issues a student is having, if they report that before the class, we can try to offer some help or some alternatives. If it's reported after the class, it just makes it a little trickier. Maybe we could have offered some suggestions. Since we've also worked through it in many different ways last spring, we have some ideas that can help you. And so we want to encourage our students to report those issues prior to class because we just want you there with us. Also, we want to continue to build those strong relationships. So elementary students are going to get at least one one-on-one virtual conference with their classroom teacher every 2 weeks and get to see them and talk to them and share things with them, just like we would at school. Middle school students have 5 core teachers. And so they're going to be meeting one-on-one with each of those teachers during a grading period. So that way it's kind of still personalized and they're getting to see everybody, but they're getting to schedule it and spread that out a little bit and getting to talk to each of their teachers. Always, whether we are on campus or whether we are learning remotely, communication is critical. It is so important to have that communication between our families, with our students, with our classes, with one another. So there are a lot of ways that communication is going to look the same in remote learning as it does on campus. Lesson plans will continue to be updated. And I wrote on here on this slide, RenWeb. I know they've changed their name and combined with FACTS. So whichever term you're more comfortable with, I just keep thinking about it as RenWeb. Lesson plans are going to continue to be updated there. One of the things that we really wanted to respond to was the fact that there were times that students or parents felt like they had to go to several different places to find assignments. So we're going to make sure that elementary through middle school can find all of their assignments in Google Classroom when they are in remote learning. This is for remote learning. So they're going to be able to go to their Google Classroom and see all of their assignments. Pre-K through 5th grade will still get that daily checklist and that will include the Zoom links for the day. The only difference that you're seeing right here with that daily checklist is that it won't include a morning greeting because we'll be greeting them every day live. So they're still going to see that daily checklist. Middle school has learned how to use the to-do list in the Google Classroom. And if they're not confident in it, or if they're looking at it saying, well, I didn't access that and I want to this year, we're going to make sure they know where to find the to-do list. For 1st through 8th grade, we're going to make sure all assignments are turned in through Google Classroom. And we're going to help walk the students through that so they know how to do that. We found that the more places that they had to turn in, well, I'm going to speak for myself. I tried to provide my students last spring with 3 different ways they could turn in assignments. And rather than make that easier, it made it a little bit more confusing for the students. So now we're just going to have one way to turn in assignments that will help the students, and it will help the teachers find the assignments. We're going to keep up with our weekly newsletters because there's still things that you guys need to know that we want to communicate. So none of that will change in remote learning. I know that as a parent, I would want to know how much time I could expect my student to be spending on the computer. I know that even though we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, we still want to watch how much screen time our student is getting each day. For middle school students, they're going to follow their usual schedule in remote learning. So their remote learning will look a lot like their school day. And it doesn't mean that they're going to be 45 minutes back to back, but rather they will have class during that regularly scheduled class time. All of our teachers are going to provide tutorial times through open Zoom sessions where students can just come on in like they would come into a classroom and ask questions. And your teachers will let you know when those open Zoom sessions will be. The bottom part of this, or the bottom half of this slide, shows you what to expect for various grade levels. And we broke it down in between our littlest and our oldest. So pre-K and kinder can expect to spend 45 to 60 minutes each class day online. And that's a combination of things. So when I say online, I don't necessarily mean all live, but it will be a combination of synchronous, the live learning, asynchronous, the videos or the interactive lessons on the computer, or one-on-one sessions with their teacher through Zoom. Offline work time, homework, practice, projects, they can expect to spend 15 to 30 minutes each day. Now you're going to see in reading, it's the same for every grade, just like it is on campus. We ask that our Holy Cross warriors spend 20 minutes each day reading. And so we're going to continue with that expectation. For 1st and 2nd grade, these guys are getting a little bit older. They're going to spend 90 to 120 minutes of class time each day online, with 60 to 90 minutes of practice and homework and classwork each day. They're learning a lot of fundamentals in math and grammar, and they need time to practice those skills and learn how to do them efficiently and effectively. Our 3rd and 4th graders are getting a little bit older still and expanding on those fundamentals. So they're going to spend 2 to 3 hours each class day online and 60 to 90 minutes in doing some other work outside of that online time. 5th grade is moving towards middle school. So they're becoming more like their middle school peers, and we're helping them grow with that. So they're going to spend 2.5 to 4 hours a class day online. And again, that's not all live. It is a combination of activities. And then 60 to 90 minutes each day offline, practicing those skills and becoming more proficient with them. So these are just a few things that didn't fit into the other categories. So we've got some miscellaneous remote learning standards. We are going to do our very best to make remote learning as close to on-campus learning as we can. We really want to excel still more. We really want to go above and beyond for our students and with our students. So with that in mind, these are just a few things that will stay the same between remote learning and on-campus learning. Grades are still going to be taken in accordance with school policy. Students can expect weekly tests like Bible and spelling, along with any other testing that they would normally encounter. That's not going to feel unusual to them. Families are going to be provided with bundles or packets. I kind of like bundles because it seems like you're getting some gifts, and they're going to have different things within that bundle. Every 2 weeks they'll get those, and they're going to include most supplies to participate in classroom activities. Things like perishable items. If you needed an egg to participate in a science experiment, we're probably going to ask the families to provide that. Probably wouldn't go home well in a bundle. So we're going to do our very best to provide you with all the things you need to participate in. There may be some staple bags that will be ready for art or science so that everybody can open them together and participate in a science experiment at the same time during class. Your very first bundle is going to include everything you need for the first 3 weeks of school, so that you're not coming 1 week and then having to come back right away. So we're going to do the first 3 weeks. But it's also going to include some school supplies. So pencils, crayons, paper, anything that's not perishable that we can give you that you would typically get at school. So the things that you would look for at school will be in that bundle. 3rd through 8th grade will receive their Chromebooks at this time. So I'm very excited about this because this is where the check writing campaign funds from last check writing campaign last fall primarily went to making sure we had the technological resources to provide 3rd through 8th grade with Chromebooks. And so 3rd through 8th grade will get a Chromebook at this time. If you are in a lower grade, 1st, 2nd, kinder, and you need some help with that, there are Chromebooks that will be available to check out. And I'm sure Mrs. Martin and Mr. Martin would be able to answer any questions and help you with that.
Thank you, Julie. That you covered a tremendous amount of information in a very expeditious way. So thank you. You were talking so quickly but clearly for us. So I appreciate that very, very much. And I'm so grateful to Julie for all of the time and effort that she has invested in taking all of our ideas and making sure that they made sense for everybody and that they were adequately communicated for everyone so that we're all on the same page, because a lot of frustrations come when our expectations are in different places. And so our hope is by the time you get through watching this whole video that we'll be on the same page and that we'll have the same expectations for the year ahead. I want to remind you again that our 3 priorities to help us with that standard of care are batching, monitoring, and reducing time and exposure. And so our heart's desire is that we get our students back to campus. And so now the second half of the presentation, I've asked Jennifer Newton to come on board and to explain to us what it's going to look like when we all get together again. Jennifer, are you muted?
All right, here I am. Okay, so I'm just going to encourage everybody to take a deep breath right now, and then we will settle in to what school is going to look like when we get back together. And so please, please know, and just keep repeating this to yourself as I go along. This is not forever. This is just for a short period of time. And so I think that is going to, if you'll just keep reminding yourself of that, I think that is going to make this more easier to digest. So here we go. The first thing that you need to know that we are going to be taking care of and that we are very mindful of is the sanitation. Bethany Smith has just been an absolute master at figuring out ways to keep our our campus clean and sanitized. And so that is going to be done daily. Please also know that there are going to be periods of time throughout the day, every 2 hours or so, that those high touch areas around the school are going to be, we're going to pay special close attention to those. And then within your child's classroom, those areas are just going to be cleaned all day, every day, okay? Those teachers are gonna make sure that your students are learning in a clean and sanitized environment. We are also looking at some filtration systems. Now, I need to be very upfront with you about that. That is gonna require some approval from the board, because that's expensive. And so, but we are looking at that. And then we've also received some suggestions about UV lighting. There have been some studies that may help eliminate some of those COVID-19 germs. And so please know that we have heard your suggestions. We are not taking your suggestions lightly. At this time, we are still studying and we're still investigating on how accurate that those claims may be. So we've heard you, we have, and so we're just not ready to make a decision on that just yet. We are making sure that good health and hygiene curriculum is not only going to be given to our kiddos, but our staff. Our staff has been trained on great health practices, and we're going to make sure that your kiddos are also in the know about all of those good health and hygiene practices. And we're going to do our very best to make sure that those just become habit, so that we can keep kids healthy all the time, even when we aren't dealing with a pandemic. Now, one thing that is going to be a little bit different when we're all on campus together is that we are going to be participating in health and temperature screenings. Your staff is going to be screened, as well as students. So that is going to be everyone. Now, I know that might seem a little scary or a little intrusive. Please know that you are going to be greeted by the same faces that you love. And so we are working right now at trying to come up with a digital way to do those health screening questions, because we know that sometimes we tend to get backed up at when you get to the drop-off line in the mornings. And so we are going to try to do that so that you can just take care of that health screening online, and then you can just show us that maybe via your phone whenever you pull up to drop your kiddo off. And then there will be someone there to take your child's temperature. We're going to use IR thermometers so that they're going to be touchless. So we will have a few checkpoints there when you're dropping your kiddos off. And as long as that health screening and that temperature check all looks great, then your child will lovingly be welcomed onto campus. Now, let's say that we've got a situation where maybe somebody shows up tardy and they didn't get screened in that drop-off line. Well, sweet Miss Conrad will meet you at those front doors, and all of that will get taken care of out on the front porch. And then once everything is good to go, then you can come onto campus. We're just trying to make sure that we catch any germs as early as we possibly can, and that any red flags that pop up early, we just want to make sure that the campus that we have is as germ-free as possible. So we know that you will understand that new protocol there. Okay, another new protocol, and this is just kind of life right now. We are going to be asking for all of our students and staff and anyone that enters our campus, our building, to wear a face covering out of respect for others. So let's just talk about that for a little bit, okay? I know that everybody loves talking about masks, so let's just dive into that and look at what that's going to look and feel like on our campus. So as far as faculty and staff, our faculty and staff will be wearing face masks at all times in common spaces. And I want to make a little note here that face shields, those do not replace face masks. Now, you will see some individuals on campus, especially if they are interacting with a sick kiddo or if they are taking temperatures, if they are in a situation where they are close and aren't able to social distance, you will see some individuals wearing both a face mask and a face shield. But a face shield will not replace a face mask. And those face masks will be worn at all times when students are present in the classroom. Okay, so let's talk about students. For our little bitties, our pre-K and our kindergartners, we're going to ask that masks be worn in common spaces, but those are not going to be required in the classroom. We realize that those little bitties, they are in formative years where they are learning sounds and they are mimicking different ways to say things, and our teachers need to be able to see their little mouths. And so our pre-K and our kindergartners, they are not going to be required to wear masks in the classroom. However, please know that in any of these scenarios, if your child is not required to wear a mask, but you as the parent would prefer them to be in a mask all day, that is perfectly fine. We will definitely honor that request. In grades 1 through 3, they will be worn in common spaces. Let's talk about what common spaces may look like. So as a student is walking down to class, when social distancing isn't really an option there, we're going to do the best that we can. But if it's a situation where social distancing is not going to be easy, then that's what we're considering common spaces. So 1st through 3rd grade, worn in common spaces. They will be worn in small groups. So for example, when your kiddos come back to that back table to do their F&F small groups, there is no way that we can social distance in a situation like that. So no big deal. We're just going to ask that those kiddos just pop their mask on real quick for that. And also that's going to include when a student is interacting with his or her teacher. There's going to be lots of times when a teacher is monitoring the classroom, she is walking around, she is checking work, she is answering questions. And obviously that is done better if they're not 6 feet from that student. And so in a situation like that, we would ask for the kiddo to pop their mask on there as well. Now, for our older kiddos, their lungs are a little bit bigger, and so the particles that can come out when they talk, it's able to travel a little bit further there. So for those kiddos that are in 4th through 8th grade, we are going to ask that masks be worn at all times. Now, please know, though, that those can be taken off outdoors while maintaining social distancing. And I also want to take a moment right here to know, or to make note that there are going to be times during the day when your child's teacher just says, you know what, I think it's time for a mask break. And so that is perfectly fine. We understand the teachers are going to get tired of wearing a mask all day long. And so when we talk about scheduling, you're going to see that we have allotted more time for going outdoors, some added recess, things like that. So we know that these kiddos are going to need some mask breaks and things like that. And we want to be sensitive to those needs. You're going to see a sign posted at the front of our door, those front doors at our school, that just inform visitors that if you are coming on campus, and mask must be worn at all times. All right, so I have hit on physical distancing just a little bit. And so we are going to do our absolute very best to keep our kiddos at least 6 feet apart. We know with those little bitties that is going to be a bit of a challenge, but especially for our older kiddos, 6 feet is our goal. Now, I know that that may sound a little cold. It may sound a little distant, but we have positioned some of the desk in the classrooms already. We have walked those halls, and please know that those Holy Cross classrooms still look as warm and inviting as they did before. All they are missing are kiddos in the seats, and once they get there, it is going to feel just like home. So please know that even though the kiddos' desks are going to be spread out, it is still going to feel just like Holy Cross. That also is going to mean that lunches are, those are going to be had in class. And so, but know that even though we are asking that the lunches be done within the classroom setting, that is another time that we are encouraging teachers that if they want to head outside and have a picnic, you know, with their kiddos, they can spread those out, and that is going to be encouraged. So we are going to look for fun ways to make some of these differences. We want to put smiles on faces. And so lunch outdoors is one of the ways that we can do that. All right, so when we talk about scheduling, I think I already hit on the fact that we are going to do our very best to work in some extra recesses, things like that. Please know that we are still going to have PE. We are still going to have our specials. Now, our specials, teachers will come room to room. They will not be headed to the library like they normally would, but all of those things that make Holy Cross special, those are still going to happen. We are still going to have chapel. The things are going to look different, but we are still going to have those. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what scheduling is going to do. I talked earlier about how sometimes we tend to get backed up into the street, and our Holy Cross neighbors don't appreciate that, understandably. So because we're going to be doing those health screenings and those temperature checks, we want to be mindful of our neighbors. So we are going to do a little bit of staggered arrival and dismissal. So at 8 o'clock, we are going to ask our elementary and middle school students to drop off then. And one thing that's going to look a little bit different is once they have been screened and their temperatures have been checked, they are going to head straight to their classrooms this year. We are going to back that up a little bit for pre-K and kinder, and we are going to ask them to arrive at 8:15. And once again, we are going to do that health screening. We are going to check the temperatures, and then those little pre-Kers and kindergarteners, they will be met by one of their pre-K aides that they love dearly, and we will make sure that they make it safely down to their classrooms. Now, for dismissal, we're going to spread that out a little bit also. They are going to be dismissing straight from their classroom, and so we realized that could take a little bit longer. So we're going to ask for pre-K and stay and play to dismiss at 3 o'clock. Elementary and middle school, they will be dismissed at 3:10. And then our kindergartners, they will dismiss at 3:25. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, well, what if I have kids in multiple of these categories? So what we're going to do in that situation is, if you have kiddos, okay, let's talk drop off first. If you have an elementary student and a kindergartner, or a middle school student and a pre-K or anything like that, we're going to ask you to drop off at the earlier time. So whatever your youngest child's time is, that's when you're going to drop them off. And then it's going to be the opposite for dismissal. So you would come at the later time, okay? So if you have multiple kids, then whichever time falls the latest, that's when you would come to pick them up. So if you have a pre-K kiddo and you have an elementary kiddo, then you would come at 3:10 to pick both of them up. Alrighty, let's talk about cohorts, because this is one of the ways, this is going to be probably the biggest way that we are going to be able to control and to just the contact tracing on campus, and to make sure that germs are staying contained at Holy Cross. So let's talk about what a cohort is. The definition is a group of people banded together or treated as a group, a supporter or companion. And if that does not define what our Holy Cross classrooms are, I don't know what does. So that is just a perfect definition. And then it says a cohort is a collection of people who share an experience or a characteristic over time. And so I would definitely go out on a limb to say that a global pandemic is an experience that these sweet little friends will be sharing over a period of time. So our job is to keep those cohorts small. And so let's talk about what that does. It's going to limit exposure from one classroom to another. So a homeroom and a homeroom teacher, they are going to be considered a cohort. They are going to stay in that room for periods of time until it is time for them to head out to recess, that type thing. But they're going to do lunch together. They're going to do their lessons together. They're going to have their specials together. There's going to be lots of togetherness with this little group of friends. And so that is going to allow from cross-contamination to happen, hopefully. So that's our thinking as far as those classrooms and that classroom teacher. And so there is right there, you can see the 2020-2021 class roster. So you can see who your child's cohort is going to be. I do want to recognize, though, and take a moment to name that the one of the things that makes Holy Cross special is the fact that our littles and our bigs have those relationships. We do things like reading buddies and those relationships at chapel when they get to sit together. And it is our heart's desire that our littles and our bigs still create those bonding relationships. So please, please know that we are already in the works on figuring out neat, creative ways that we can still make that happen, because we know that that is important, and we know that that is something super special to Holy Cross that we're just not willing to let go of.
Hey, Jennifer.
Yes.
Can I interrupt you just for a second to say, I don't believe that link right there is going to be active since we're recording it, but I will send that document out with this email.
Excellent. So you will get that shortly. Okay, I need for everybody to take a real deep breath right now, because this is one that is this one's gonna be hard. It really is. And this one is one of, it's one of the ones that was most heartbreaking for us as decision makers. But one of the ways that we're gonna keep our staff and our kiddos safe is by limiting visitors this year. And so let's talk about what that's going to look like, or what that may not look like this year. In the best interest of our students, we will be limiting visitors on campus, including parents in the classroom. All necessary visitors will be screened on the porch. That's that health and temperature check that I mentioned earlier. And they must wear an appropriate face mask. And so I need for you to make sure, though, that you understand that those are necessary visitors. And for your convenience, if it's just something like, my kiddo left their F&F book at home, or, a lunch got left, something like that, there is going to be a drop-off box that's going to be available on the porch. You can just pop that in that drop-off box, and Tiffany will see that, and then she will just make sure that that is delivered to your kiddo ASAP. Now, so what we are going to do is we're going to ask that parents remain in their vehicles whenever possible to ensure the health and safety of our students' learning environment. Okay, so I want to address another word that can kind of appear a little scary, and I want to assure you that it is not. We are going to have a room on campus that is for isolation. And that word isolation, please know that that is just something that we use as a staff and faculty, and now you parents know what it means. But we are not, that is not a word that we are going to use with your kiddos. We're not going to tell those kiddos, okay, you're going to isolation. That is not what we're doing here. We are just using that word to let you know what the purpose of this particular room is going to be. If we end up with sick kiddos on campus, we need to make sure that their germs do not mix with any of the well students or staff on campus. So we're just going to have a room on campus that where they're going to be there with me. On this page, you also see Miss Bercy and Miss Conrad. They could also come into contact with them in our isolation room, but we are going to make sure that your kiddo is loved on and taken care of and made to feel super, super comfortable while they are waiting for a parent to come pick them up. And I want to make sure that everybody understands why it is so, so, so important that we are trying to isolate these germs as quickly as possible. We at Holy Cross, we love the fact that, we have multiple siblings that are spread out throughout campus. We have parents that work there. We are just a very tight, close-knit, overlapping group of friends. And although that is what makes Holy Cross absolutely amazing, that is also what makes Holy Cross why we have to be super careful during this time, because we have the potential for direct contact with a COVID-19 case really could it could just be really bad for our campus. And so let me give you an example. So let's say that we have a student that has come to the isolation room, and we have decided that, it's probably best that this kiddo head home, a situation like that. Well, if that kiddo ends up being diagnosed with COVID-19, let's say that that student is in 2A, it's in one of our second grade classrooms, but that student has siblings in kindergarten and maybe even in 4th grade. What would have to happen in this situation? If we end up with a COVID-19 class, that second grader would have to be sent home, and that child's entire cohort, in addition to the kindergarten cohort and the fourth grade cohort, all three of those classes would have to slide in to remote learning. So that is the reason why it is so important for us to make sure that our cohorts stay super tight and that we are isolating any potential germs out there. Now, I want to just give you a peace of mind. We are not going to be sending kiddos home for every sniffle that they have, and you're going to be privy to what that would look like a little bit closer to time. We do have a list of those signs and symptoms that we're going to evaluate before making those calls, but we just do want for you to understand the seriousness of the situation and why it is so very important that we get off to a strong start in remote learning right now at the very beginning of school, because the potential for cohorts sliding in and out of remote learning throughout the rest of the year, it is a very real potential. And so because our teachers are just going to excel still more, and because our students are going to excel still more here at the beginning of school, when that does happen throughout the school year, they are going to be so well prepared, and they're going to be able to handle that situation so much better than the scenario that happened in the spring of last year.
Thank you, Jennifer, very much. And thank you for all your hard work this summer. She has been up to the minute. If a new report comes out, I get it within 10 minutes. As soon as she's read it, and then she's forwarding it along to me if it appears that it could affect our plan in any way whatsoever. And this has been a very fluid time, and we've pivoted several times this summer. But we do feel like this is a really good, solid way for us to start school and then continue school. And if I could just reiterate what Jennifer said, we feel like starting remotely gives our kids a really solid foundation. And then as we have to go back and forth in and out of quarantine, in and out of remote learning, they'll be equipped and confident to do that. And so that had a lot to do and played a big factor in us making the decisions that we have made. So let me tell you just a little bit more about the planning process. We know we're going to be doing remote learning for 3 weeks. We're praying that things improve. I did see one small little improvement today, so I'm praying that that's going to start a trend, a downward trend. And so we are praying for getting back on campus somewhere near the end of September. When we do, we're going to re-enter in what we call the red phase. And so that will be all the things that Jennifer just described to you. The specials teachers will travel to classes. The middle school students who have been broken into smaller cohorts will be in one homeroom, and their teachers will travel around to them because that keeps them safer. It helps with exposures for them. So they'll be limited to that one homeroom class. We are going to practice our social distancing. I don't think that's going away, guys. I hope that it doesn't last forever and ever, but it's not going away anytime soon. We're going to use masks. As Jennifer mentioned, there will be appropriate times to put them on when they're walking in the lobby, in the hallway. Just out of respect for everyone, we'll all be wearing our masks. When they get to classrooms, depending on their age, that will change. You know, the teacher will have the correct requirements for them. And we'll also do those health screenings when we come back. Everything that she's described to you, that's what red is. Okay, that also means that they will be eating lunch either in the classroom or hopefully outside on carpet squares under a beautiful tree. We have a lot of those now. If they're able to do that, the way you're going to help us out best is to not send heated lunches and to send things that the student can open independently. We'll talk more about it when it gets close to school, but the reason we're telling you that is it keeps your child healthier, because the less times that your teacher has to touch their things, the less chance there is that she's transmitting someone else's germs to your family. And so that's not done to be harsh or restrictive. It's all of these decisions are done to help keep everyone safe and to avoid that transmission of germs from one to the other. So if you will please not send heated lunches when we're in red, just in red, no heated lunches. That way the teacher can say, hey, let's go outside for a picnic. And doesn't that sound great? Okay. And so then after 3 weeks, a minimum of 3 weeks that we are free of illness on our campus. We haven't had any, I would call it a COVID scare, but whether that's a positive case or a symptomatic case, somebody's really sick and we are waiting on results. If we go 3 weeks without that, and the CDC and the local Department of Health's recommendations all agree, we will step down. And so that step down will be called yellow. Our teachers will be given that notice in our faculty meeting on a Tuesday, and then it will be implemented the following Monday. And so it's almost a week's notice there. And we'll still have face coverings, but that may be relaxed just a little bit more in the classroom, or just a little bit more depending on what the recommendations from the health department are. Like I said, social distancing still going to apply. At that time, our cohorts, our grade level cohorts could combine. And so first grade could go outside together to do a learning activity. They could go outside and share their recess time together. Maybe sixth grade goes back together to do a special project or something like that. So they'll have that time to kind of expand their friend group just a little bit. At that time, we're going to reevaluate whether we feel like it's safe for middle school to begin to change classes. Not sure how that is going to play out, because middle school moving around the campus affects all of our other students, because they'll be moving across all areas of the campus. And so we want to make sure that we are being mindful of every single student and keeping them all healthy. That's a decision that we'll evaluate at that time and see if it can be made. That would also be when we would allow a limited number of parents back on campus. They would still have to be screened, they'd still have to wear a mask, but 2 parents could come on campus, maybe to have lunch out on the picnic tables, or to come to a program or something that we're able to put on then in person. We'd also then open up Friday lunches again. Well, it would probably be pizza every Friday. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's a contactless meal, and kids love pizza. And so we could deliver those pizzas to the classroom with a very limited chance of contamination, and then the teacher can pass those out at this point, when we're in this phase, relatively easily without too much risk of contamination. That's when we're also expecting our athletic events to open back up, though we have not received any direction from our federation. We are a part of the Christian School Athletic Federation, and so they will be the ones who direct how that goes. Okay, and then when we get to level green, praise Jesus, we are back where we want to be, back to normal as we know it. Business as usual. Athletics will resume as normal. Electives we're still going to have middle school electives, but in green, they go back to being mixed grade levels in getting to choose what elective each student prefers for those middle school students. Parents will be, once again, such a valuable part of our community and be welcomed back with open arms. And please understand that was a very, very hard decision for us to make. But what we had to look at was that batching, monitoring, and limiting exposure. And so what we want to do is create the healthiest environment that we can, the best environment that we can for your students. And so if we can keep all those extra germs out, then we increase the probability that we can stay on campus. Every time someone else comes on campus, they bring all the germs that they've been exposed to. And so then that makes it a little more difficult for us to keep on campus and keep everybody healthy. So these decisions are made because we want your children to be able to stay on campus and get the best education in the best environment. None of us are arguing that. We absolutely believe being together in our classroom, that's sacred ground to us, and that's a place where we know God wants us to be ultimately. And so we want to make sure we're doing all that we can to get there. In level green, field trips will resume, the library will open up, middle school will definitely rotate classes, and then specials will return to their normal schedule as well. All of that is to say, if we slide into a relaxed rigor or stringency of our protocol, and there's a flare up, there's a situation where several kids get sick, then at any time we can strengthen we can make that stiffer if we need to, and go back into say red if that's needed. I feel like our staff is well prepared. They are the most awesome group of individuals in the world, ready to and eager to do whatever they can to make this year the best that they possibly can under the circumstances. And so they're ready to move if we need to do that. You will be communicated with weekly through fax. And anytime you have a question, you can reach out to Tiffany as our communications person, me, or to Jennifer Newton with any questions that you have. You can expect another update before school starts for sure on August 10th, but you'll begin hearing from your teachers around the 1st of August, and they'll be filling you in on all the plans they have to make this year special. They're going to have to think out of the box. They're going to have to make it look different than it normally does. But you know what? That's good for us too. We're learning a lot of new things that way. I want to point out to you that these decisions can change. That seems like the understatement of the summer, right? But we may have to shift to protect our school community. And I just appreciate your flexibility and your understanding. You guys do not know the power of your words and how much they lift us up. When you just send an encouraging email or text message that says, I know, that is so helpful to all of our staff, and they appreciate that so much. So I appreciate your flexibility. I appreciate your willingness to work with us. And I just want to tell you, thank you. Thank you for sticking with us. There's some Christian schools that are not going to survive this because their families are withdrawing at significant, massive amounts, and they're not going to be able to pay their faculty. And because they can't pay their faculty, they're going to go somewhere else and get a job doing something else. And that's sad to me, because there's wonderful Christian educators out there that aren't going to get to work in their calling, in what God wants them to do. And so by you continuing your faithful support to us, all these teachers that you and I love so very much get to continue to do that. And we get to continue to provide the best education we can in the best possible environment during a global pandemic. And we're going to get through this. And just as Jennifer said earlier, this is a short term, and maybe it's not as short as we'd all like it. We all wanted it to be over in May, but this isn't going to last forever. Global pandemics never do. And we're going to get past this, and we're going to be stronger for it. We're going to be warrior strong at the end of this. So as we leave, I want to close by just reminding you that we are striving for full restoration. In the immediate, we're striving for full restoration with our Holy Cross family, to be back together, to be on campus, and to be what we all feel is a normal environment. But ultimately, this is a really good time for all of us to just check our hearts, because there may be something that I know I have things I need to work on. Maybe we all do, that we need to really make sure that we are in full restoration with Christ, that we're working hard, that we're taking on that responsibility that Paul gives us to encourage each other and to be of one mind and to live in peace. And to never forget that God is always there, no matter how dark or gloomy, no matter how much we dislike the situation. We may even hate that situation. But even in the midst of it, God of love and peace is right there with you. And I would just ask you to speak out of those words. We are more than happy to answer your questions and talk with you about it. I know this is a frustrating time. I'm frustrated as well. But just as you're talking to our staff members, I just ask that you just remember to do it out of that encouragement, to help them to feel like all of the effort that they've poured into the last 6 months has been appreciated. God bless. Be well.